Well, hey everybody, Nick Slavik here, proprietor of the Nick Slavik Painting and Restoration Company, also the host of Ask a Painter Live. It's a weekly live Facebook show where I use my over 2 decades of experience as a painter, an entrepreneur, and a lover of houses to answer any of your questions. Now, whether you're a homeowner or a pro, this show is for you. Think of it as a forum where we exchange information. For homeowners, what have you always wanted to ask a painter? You never have to worry about the question. The simplest question, what you would think is a stupid question, is not a stupid question. I geek out over that stuff. For pros, you know what we're here for. Entrepreneurship, marketing, apprenticeship, training, accounting, and especially business processes, which we're going to get into deep today. So a couple quick things first here. We're going to go through, I got a question about wallpaper, and I thought, again, I would use a PDCA standard to mention that I didn't come up with all this stuff. There are written standards out here. You can reference them and adapt those to your business. And then I am going to show you how I use Google to run my business. Now, there's a whole bunch of caveats when I talk about this, but that's going to be super exciting. And I can't wait to get some of your guys' feedback about Google. So I will switch this around in a little bit. I thought I would go through some wallpaper stuff first with you guys. Also, for everybody who wants to follow along, I posted this outline on Facebook. If you guys want to follow along for the Google thing, this is basically the process that I use from initial contact from a client to when they pay me, and how I use Google in between. So if you want to follow along, this is sort of like a outline for that later. I posted this maybe 10 minutes ago. You guys can find that. So, okay, well, this is show number 96, and thank you to the PDCA, the Painting and Decorating Contractors of America, for partnering with me to bring you this. They actually bring you guys some of these questions. And Jason Paris, I rescheduled an estimate to make sure I didn't miss this live. Who else reroutes? Oh man. Jeez, I think you're flattering me there. So yeah, and any questions you guys have, any comments, we'll get to it. I'll get through this wallpaper stuff here, but I want to thank the PDCA, the Painting and Decorating Contractors of America. They're the largest group of the best paint business entrepreneurs in the world, and there's a free flow of exchange. Also, if you want to get something like that, there's a lot of familiar faces there on the Business Brush group page. Nick May runs it. A lot of people get on there. You have a question, you put it on, and some of the best pros in the world answer it for you. So you got a whole bunch of resources here for you. So the PDCA was nice enough to partner with me to bring you this show, and also all these shows are archived not only on YouTube but also on the education side of the PDCA's website. So you can get in through there and watch any of these shows you like. They sent me a question from Bill, a contractor in Kansas. And Bill is actually a general contractor, but he has a question about wallpaper. I thought I would use this forum to help him out. So he says, I'm subbing out some wall covering on a historic home. I'm restoring some wall covering installation. I've noticed a few discrepancies, defects in the paper, which would probably be considered manufactured defects. They do not look like trade damage. I tried to have my installer redo a few of the sheets, or ask them why they were put up defective, but she told me it's not her purview. She just does installs. She just takes what's there and puts it on the wall. Whose responsibility is it for finding defects in wall coverings? And have you run into this before? Now, there's 2 parts to this question. I'll cover this one. Yes, I have run into this before. Back in the olden days of putting wallpaper up, everything was fabric back vinyl. It was neutral. It was almost off-white, random pattern, random match, everything else. And it was, you could kind of just do whatever you want. And there was enough randomness and stuff in there where it didn't really matter if there was a defect because you couldn't really tell it. Now, there is a standard, PDCA standard P6, that basically outlines some of this for you. And again, these standards are not for you to show up afterwards to save your rear end. These are standards you have to agree upon with the client and the contractor first of all. So P6, right here, all the standards are labeled P, P1, P2, and so far and so on. The standard basically says the purchaser must report any discrepancies in the wallpaper pattern, texture, or color to the wall covering manufacturer or distributor as soon as possible to avoid disputes. The contracting entity shall inspect surfaces prepared for others to be in compliance with the installer's surface requirements. So not only does the builder or the client have to make sure that the surface is prepared, whoever purchases the wallpaper. So normally when I do this for a homeowner, the homeowner purchases the wallpaper, but obviously I don't have them lay it all out and inspect it. So this is one of those things where you can deviate from the standard a little bit if it's better for your business and better for your client, but agree to it beforehand. So what I usually say is, get a bunch of paper, get a whole bunch extra, because you can always return it if we don't open it, and then I'm going to lay out every sheet. So, and this can be cumbersome, obviously, if you have large areas to do, but this is the pain in the rear end. The best wall covering installers in the world do it this way. Everybody else does it a different way. So you lay out all the sheets on the floor, you roll them out, you visually inspect them for discrepancies. Now, wall coverings come in lot numbers, and those lot numbers let you know what batches of dye and ink that they use to do this. So if you get 4 double rolls of wallpaper for an accent wall and you're a little bit short and the homeowner's like, well, I don't want to buy extra, we'll just get another one. And so they order another one off the internet, which is where all wall covering comes from nowadays, evidently. And another one shows up with a different lot number. There is absolutely no guarantee that those are going to match. So what you have to do, number one, is this is a personnel management problem, not really a wallpaper problem. You have to make sure that they have a whole bunch of it, enough of it on hand that you know you're not going to need more. And then you have to lay out every sheet and visually inspect it. And sometimes there's a little discrepancy here and there, but you can actually match sheets. You can trade them around and move them around to make sure that things kind of are copacetic. And you may get a weird color blend, but if it all trends towards one way, you can usually get around it. Or if you have, you know, the back wall of a closet on the inside or something, if one's got a little bit of damage, or not damage, but even just a discrepancy in the printing, you can tell the homeowner, like, hey, this one's got a little bit of a discrepancy. Do you want to try to get another one, or should we just use this on the back of a closet or something? So that's basically what you have to agree to beforehand. It's a huge pain in the rear end with wall coverings nowadays, especially when you throw in animal fur, foils, glass beads, bamboo, things you have to cut with a saw, things you can't get wet on the front. Everything is a piece of art nowadays when it comes to wall covering. So, and then the next part of the question goes, after installation, I've noticed a few of the rooms have paper that is installed out of plumb or out of level. Some of it looks fine, some of it I'm questioning. The installer told me this is normally done. Yes, am I being lied to? Question mark. No, you are not being lied to. Now, this wall covering installer seems like they have, you know, I don't agree with the non-inspection for that. But again, if you didn't agree to that beforehand, you're going to run into some problems. Now, there are times when you can install wall covering crooked, and technically you're doing what you should be doing. Now, the key to this is that he mentioned he's on a historic home. Historic homes are notoriously, you know, out of plumb, out of level, especially if they've been renovated over the years. Sometimes you'll find as big as like an inch or two difference in a floor from one side of a large room to another. Same thing with ceilings and things like that. So I thought I would give you a quick tutorial, and this is where the art of wallpaper sort of comes in. Now, let's say you have wall covering like this. It's got a match, a drop match like this, so obviously you're rotating every other sheet of paper. If you have a big discrepancy in the wall height, this is a little bit better. Anytime you have a set pattern, you're going to be able to tell if your ceiling line dips. So you can tell from this pattern it was cut off at this particular area, right about here. Now, if that ceiling is an inch lower or higher on the other side, you're going to be going an inch up and you're going to see it. Now, the thing is, if it's subtle colors, subtle patterns, you can sometimes get around this. You can even cut a little bit at the bottom. You can section some areas out to kind of scrunch it on one edge like this if it's just a subtle thing. Now, this is a little more forgiving. This is an absolute nightmare if you get into one of these. You notice how fine the pattern is? Not only is it exactly geometric, the contrast between the light and the dark, you will be able to see every discrepancy, every dip, every dive, every this and that. You have to warn your clients if they're putting something like this up here. So if you have a piece like this to the top of the screen and it goes like this, you're going to see the difference in the baseboard, the corners, and the ceiling like this. Very difficult. You throw in a couple windows and a door frame in an old house, and you're going to see everywhere where those things deviate. So be very, very careful unless the clients know what they're getting into. The only saving grace of something like this is if you do something this wild and garish all over the room, it's going to be so overwhelming that you're not going to notice a lot of the discrepancies at first, but you will see them if you're looking for them. All right, so lastly, way more forgiving. something like this. If they want bold patterns like this, obviously the top and the bottom doesn't matter. You can move it up, move it down, and with the stripes, you're going to be fine. The only way you run into problems is corners. The tighter the stripe like this, the more you're going to be able to see discrepancies. If you have a really wide stripe, sometimes you get a piece of wall covering like this and it's only got 1 or 2 stripes in it, maybe 2.5 stripes, and that's way more forgiving, because when you get into a corner, if you're a 1/2 inch, oh, I got a ladybug. If you got a 1/2 inch or you got 2 or 3 inches like that, sometimes it doesn't matter in a corner like that. So you can take up a little bit of this white space if you didn't have these intermediate lines in there, and it's a little more forgiving. So I hope that answers your question there. We're going to get on to Google here. So again, everybody, if you're interested, you can follow along. I posted this timeline about 10-15 minutes ago. I'll get my computer fired up here. And you guys can follow along if you like. I'll explain. So Bill, I hope that helped. General contractor down in Kansas. And if you guys have any other questions or comments, please list them below here. So I'm going to go through and grab a couple comments quick. Jason Paris, Parker Johnson, Chad Merriam, Mark Johnston, Philip Klein. Oh, happy Friday to you too, my friend. He's down in Iowa. Is a fun contractor to watch there. So Jason, you're too kind and you flatter me a little bit there. Silvio, thank you, sir. Marcia Oliveira, Bautarde to you, my friend, down in Brazil. Efren, Danny, Creston, my wife is watching. Danny, what's up, Nick? You had me at Google. All right, we're going to flip this thing around here. Chad Merriam, alarm clock went off at 11:58 to tune in. Oh, man, you guys are great. Okay, so here we go, guys. I'm going to show you how I use Google to run my business. John Harrell, thank you so much, and Rafael D'Souza. All right, here we go, folks. Now, I'm switching my camera around to front view. I'm not going to be able to see a lot of the comments right away, but I will certainly get to them in a second here. So I'll give you the basics. Maybe one thing that I should run you through real quickly here before we switch over is I'm going to give you a few caveats. Number one, I have 2 guiding lights in my business right now. Number one, simpler is better. And number 2, be efficient. Be a special forces group as opposed to a standing army. So no overhead, basically. So right now, because we're in rapid growth mode, hopefully we will double the business this year. And if everything works out well and systems are in place, we will attempt it again next year. This works if you don't overcomplicate the systems. Now, the key is the painting side is a sort of, it's not solved, nothing is ever solved, but there's not a lot of questions left over in the coding science period. We have our processes down, we have a proven product, and now we just have to do more of it. So now, in moving forward, I will not get overhead until I absolutely need it. And the way I judge when I need overhead, like overhead being, you know, somebody in the office, another van, something like that, equipment, is when you get that, it should be a huge relief. If you get a piece of overhead and it doesn't feel like a big relief, right now in this stage of my business, that's not something I'm interested in. And then simpler is better. There's an old engineering principle. Everybody who's ever painted for an engineer know they're quite insane, but they are very good at what they do, and they love process, and they love simplifying things. And an old engineer once told me that, you know, it's super fancy to make this Rube Goldberg contraption that does a lot of things, and it's impressive in moving parts, but those are the things that fail, and they don't have a proven track record. Simpler is better. Everything, the most beautiful things in life are simple. So those are the 2 things I run my business by. And I should mention, I do not use Google to run my business because I do not like Work Glue, Estimate Rocket, things like that. I'm very impressed by those products, and I probably will move to something like that later, but right now, Google is free, it's omnipresent, it's easy, and it's adaptable to huge companies. So don't let anybody ever tell you you can't run a multi-million-dollar company off of something like Google here. So, okay, quick and dirty. Here we go. Let's go through it. Okay, make sure we're all set up here. Okay, so basically, I'm going to run you through. So for everybody, I've followed this. I'm basically going to go right down the line here, and I'll show you at every stage how I use Google for my business. So the basis of Google for me is Google Drive. My drive is set up into 2 sides. We have my side, and then we have the company's side. And you can see here with that little body right there, that means this folder is shared. This folder is not. This is everything that I need for the business that I don't feel benefits my apprentices or craftspeople at all. So there's a bunch of personal stuff in here. There's a bunch of just general business kind of things in here that doesn't really benefit them, and I don't want to overcomplicate their side of it. I do keep a folder with all of my estimates and invoices and things here, and I'll get into that later. So that's my side of the drive. When you go into the employee side of the drive, there's three main kind of documents that we use. We have our Eisenhower matrix, which I'll get into again later. We have our jump sheet and our paint order form. And then all three of these forms get populated into these folders. So I, in order to just sort of make things easier to find, I have all my projects listed in here by month. So right now we're in April, so we're listing projects here by client name, so there could be multiple projects in there, and I have a copy of what our jump sheet is called. So all right, before we get too deep into that, I will run through the process here. So all right, number one on there, collect leads. We're living in an interesting time. Right now I think there's somewhere between 11 and 13 ways that people can get a hold of me and ask for me to paint something for them. So we have landline, which is the phone that plugs in. We have cell phone, email. They can text me. They can Facebook message me. They can Facebook message me through my business's site, Nick Slavik Painting and Restoration. They can Facebook message me through Ask a Painter's page. They can Facebook post and just say, hey, Nick, here's what I'm thinking about painting, so I have to watch for my name being tagged in those. I have Facebook ads out there, so they can respond to ads, or they can inquire through a specific button on an ad. I have Instagram ads. They can inquire through those. They can direct message me through Instagram. They can Twitter me. My website has a estimate inquiry portion of it, and then also people just come up to me on the street, or when I'm grocery shopping and say, hey, Nick, you got to come look at my barn this summer. So basically, I catfish it. I'm circulating the bottom like this, just looking for leads. I comb all those areas. I do have a daily cycle for myself. I have that pinned right above my computer, actually, on the wall. And it's basically, here's what I do. Here are the 11 things I do every day, and I'm going to basically go through them 3 times a day just to hit on them and see whatever leads are. So once I collect a lead, here, I go to initial contact. So my preferred method is to just physically call the people. I want to get them on the phone because I want to hear about their project, I want to pre-qualify them, and I want to get them on the calendar right away. I am not a fan of shooting out 4 times and then they shoot you back 4 times, but it's 8 hours later. I hate the back and forth. It's so inefficient, and if you do that with 20 people a day, you will definitely lose track. So what I do is I wait for a normal time, usually between 8 and 9 in the morning, and I mass call everybody, and I try to get everybody on the phone. If I get somebody's voicemail, I always end up saying, okay, on my calendar, which I'll show you here, I'm going to find a time on my calendar. I normally do my estimates Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. I have my calendar spread out into a 5-day week so I can see my work week. I'll say, okay, we're going to pick a spot here. We have a 10 a.m. Wednesday the 18th. And on their voicemail, I will say, hey, I'd love to come out there and see your project. Why don't you give me a call, give me a text. I'm going to pencil you in 10 a.m. Wednesday the 18th. I'll come to you and we'll take care of that estimate for you. And then they respond back, yes, that's good, or no, I work, so we have to come another time. But I've taken about 2 or 3 steps out of it by not only trying to call them, but then getting them on the calendar right away. Okay, so what I do is, purple are my professional and personal appointments during the day. The blue one here is our the company war room meeting is always 6 a.m. Monday morning every week. My appointments through the week, some are sales calls, estimates, some are color consultations, and some are just general business sort of things to do there. My crews are broken up into 4 color-coded crews right here. We have an auxiliary crew, which is an orange crew that we kind of break out to the other crews. Those are made up of some part-time people. But when this is an estimate I did this last week. When I call somebody and say, okay, I'm thinking about 10 a.m. on the 18th, color coding really helps me. If it's a tentative estimate that's not been confirmed, I will put it in orange. And then that stays on an orange date until they call me back. And I basically just leave it. So if this is into next week, Tuesday already, if it's coming Monday and I haven't heard back from that person, then I just make the other call and say, hey, by the way, I have you penciled in for this. Does it still work? And if it does, we move it to purple. So purple are all my, like I said, all my appointments. So I'll move it to purple when it's confirmed. When we put somebody's name in there, this is great because it's a sort of one source, the person's name, the estimate, the date and the time, the address here, whether it's confirmed or unconfirmed. And then I always make my notes in the bottom. This person wants an exterior estimate. Here's their email address and here's their cell phone number. And I'll put in a whole bunch of other things where they, I'll say, they work, they can only meet after 5:30 p.m. The dogs are crazy here. I won't be here, but my uncle will be here. I take down any pertinent information because there's some weeks where I have 32 of these to do, and I've got to jog my memory sometimes just to make sure, especially if you haven't put a face to a name yet. So, and that's how I populate my my list of appointments like this. So we've initially contacted them. I try to pre-qualify them so I'm not running all over the place. When I was growing my business, I had a very distinct plan of everybody who calls me has evidently some amount of interest. So I'm going to go to you and I'm going to put a face to a name so that you see my face, you can hear me talk, you can see me, I'm a trustworthy person. And even if this project isn't right for you, my price isn't right for you, or my processes aren't right for you, you've made a contact and now you have somebody in the future. Now, when I'm sort of pinched on time a little bit, if I did that to everybody, that's all I would do is drive around and do estimates. The other reason I started pre-qualifying people over the phone was because the nature of the projects. So everybody wants their cabinets painted and all the trim in their house painted, and all it takes is a mention of how long it's going to take and how much the price is, and you can weed out about 40% of those people just initially on the phone to be like, oh my god, I had no idea, never mind, we're going to do something else. The other half that aren't put off by that, the other 60% that aren't put off by that, I'll go see and we'll do an estimate. So okay, during the estimate, obviously, when I pack up for the day, I try to do all my estimates Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Obviously, we have to deviate from that. You can see here, this person works. So I'm going to have to go to them in the evening. Nobody can be there during the day. But I try to populate all my estimates Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday because Monday, I want to react to the start of the week for the crew, and I want to work on my business. And Friday, obviously, we have Ask a Painter, which is awesome. A few other things going on, but I also like to finish up the week, just see if anybody needs anything. This is usually the day where somebody finishes early, somebody needs a little extra time, and we can sort of work with that. And I also like to have easy Friday afternoons, especially come summer. I'd like to hang out with my family a little bit too. So that is how we do that. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, when I'm out doing my estimates in my truck, I pack my lunch, my cooler full of food and drinks, and I basically just business and office from the road those days. So I'll just go from estimate to estimate. I got my iPhone mounted on the dashboard of my truck. I got my GPS over here. So we're tooling around. We got done with this exterior estimate. I immediately pull up the next one. And I just go to that. And let's see, this one was actually lunch with my blue crew, and we did employee evaluations. So I also put in a reminder, by the way, go grab some pizza before you go here. So grab some pizza, go ahead lunch with them. As soon as I was done, you could just keep moving on with your day. And there's a color consultation that afternoon, and then a whole house remodel. There we go. So yeah, and this is all for my truck, so it's almost like an instruction list. I go there, and I don't have to think about, oh my god, I got 9 appointments today. I go to one appointment. As soon as I'm done with that next appointment, I click on the next one. It tells me what I'm doing, where I'm going, who do I have to do, is there any special circumstances, things like that, and then we move on from there. So after we've done the estimate, I use a, and I don't have an extra phone here to show you, but in my drive, I use Annie Newton, one of my great paint business entrepreneur friends, and somebody I look up to greatly. She's out in Washington. She had suggested an app called ScanBot. It's a free app, and basically it just automatically scans a document. So you just lay a document down there on a table or something, and the ScanBot app will automatically take a picture of it, square it up, make it better, so it's not just an image of a document, and turn it into an actual file, like a PDF file. And then you can just hit Google Drive right from ScanBot, and it'll send it right to your drive. So I'll have that right on there. Let's see, that one's not pulling up as quick. Let's see what we can get here. Here's an invoice. I do the same thing. So yeah, as soon as let's see if this other one pulled up yet here. No, not yet. Okay, so there it is there. You can see that I do paper estimates, I do paper invoicing, and then I ScanBot them in here, and then I have a file with that person's estimate and invoice on there. So, and those are all labeled and searchable. So yes, they are paper estimates. The reason I get a little kickback for paper estimates, you can see, I'll show you one of my forms here. So this is my basic estimate form here. Nothing too crazy. A couple little things I mentioned at the bottom. I do a paper estimate because I can basically walk through an entire 4,000 square foot house and itemize every closet, every ceiling, all the trim, walls, cabinets, vanities, everything in about 15 minutes. And a lot of this is experiential. A lot of this is based on production rates and things like that. But I've done so many of them, it just doesn't take me that long. It would take me longer in my van with an iPad to do this. Now, I say this knowing that this next year I am moving to an iPad and a portable printer and a little desk inside my van in my mobile command unit where I will be doing electronic estimates. But for now, this is so easy. In 15 minutes, as we walk from room to room and the homeowner describes to me what they want, I'm actually taking notes on ceiling, trim, walls, closet, and whatever else. If they want decorative things done, if they want stripes, if they want a special finish, I take notes and I basically just make my estimate so that by the time we walk back into the kitchen where we're going to sit down, I take off the duplicate, I hand it to them, and then I walk through it with them. Now, during the estimate too, I will show you this. On my side, I have client info sheets. So, let's see what we got here. So for every process, like we have, this is my most popular one here. Where'd we go? Enameling. So I made this initially for enameling because it's such an in-depth process that when I sit there and describe it to a homeowner, it's like just shooting them with a fire hose full of information. So what I basically did was I started making a whole bunch of these information sheets to hand out to them. So I do print these out. I give them to them in a manual form. I also email it to them if they would like to. But basically, for every process I have for interior painting, exterior painting, decks, front door restoration, cabinet trim, window door enameling, stain matching, wood finishing, all of these things, I have a process sheet for that basically walks them through. Here's what you can expect. If you got questions about color, that's what that section is for. Prep, the enameling, the application, and the cleaning, and I always make sure I put in my promise, all my contact information down here. I walk them through this whole thing, and I have my description. I really like to take about 15 or 20 minutes and talk to the clients. When they ask for a whole house enamel, when they want me to paint all the trim, all the cabinets, everything, it's a pretty high price, and I'm not oblivious to that. So I want to spend a lot of time with them to let them know that we put in a ton of time, and I highlight a few things here that I want them to know about this, because this is a lot of information. So a lot of the times I'll sit down and say, listen, I'm going to walk you through this, but just understand that if there's only a couple things you take away from this, most kitchens take between 40 and 50 hours of only prep, even before we prime, 40 to 50 hours. I want you to know that. It's very important. That's going to be the difference between me and every other guy who walks in here. And the average kitchen takes between 5 and 7 days to complete. So when you see that price, you're looking at the price to take two craftsmen who are going to basically take a week's worth of time to prep and then another week's worth of time to enamel your cabinets. It's not an in and out 1 day thing where we're charging you that for. So they get every one of those sheets. I also have the color consult sheet here. That is for the client as well if they opt for that. And then I have some deck stain brochures are very popular. So I have my Aura, I have my Duration, I have my Emerald sheets all here. I have my Cabot stain. So I can also just bang out to the client real quick over email and just let them say, oh yeah, and by the way, here's a reminder of the premium products I use with that as well. And I'll get to your guys' comments and questions here in just a second. After the estimate, you obviously wait for their decision. If they say yes, What I do then is again, super simple process here. I have a jobs waiting spreadsheet. I have interior. I have full exteriors. This can be, an apartment complex. It can be a single family home. And then I have a whole bunch of miscellaneous exteriors. So you can see I have two separate columns. My left column is all my interior that's waiting for jobs, waiting to be done. And my full exteriors and my partial exteriors are broken out between what's been carried over from last year, what I still have to do from last year up here, to stuff new that I've been booking down here. And yellow here helps me understand when they are ready to go. They have colors picked out, they're ready to go, and all they need from me is to have people show up and paint. So that kind of helps me go through, and I populate my list from this is the person who's been waiting the longest, and this is the brand new person. So when I go to schedule a job, I say, okay, I'm scheduling 2 weeks from now. I'm starting with this job, and I'm working my way down like this. Super simple to do. All right, so we've scheduled their project here, the color consult and the walkthrough. So if they choose to have a color consult, I go back to them and I help them with color. At the same time, I don't have a role here, but we use 3M, the yellow, the humid tape, or frog tape yellow. Yellow is my tape that I use when I walk through the house or when one of my foremen walk through the house. They will label where the colors start and stop, where we're starting and stopping. Here's some particular notes on this project so that when my other crews show up, there is a physical note in the house. So that is, when we decide colors, when we decide finishes, we'll walk through. Now, all of that information, we're not just relying on pieces of tape from a job site to do this. One of the most important pieces of technology or apps that we use within Google is basically the ability to live collaborate on some of these spreadsheets. We've created a sheet called a jump sheet, and this is basically what people would consider a project handoff sheet. This is what I create, the client's information up here, when we're starting, when we're going to end. The apprentices, my crew leaders actually keep track of which apprentice worked here and which day and how many hours, and that'll populate into a total. I give them an hourly budget right here. These are notes and special equipment needs that I take all my notes here, so we can have a smooth handoff. And here's crew leader notes for me. One of the coolest things about Google is that I can pull this up and somebody across the world can pull this same sheet up here. We can both be working on it and we can see each other working on it. So this is not one of the old Microsoft Excel spreadsheets where you have to save a version, get rid of your old one or replace it. Somebody works on another one, they save it, now you have to merge them. This is super simple. We have one living document and we just add to it. So after the crew leader notes, basically down the side here, this is for each particular thing. On a typical interior project, we'll put, master bedroom, master bath. This is a section for my apprentices to check mark when they've completed it. I label the substrate. So if this is master bedroom, we'll go walls, ceiling, closet, trim, the colors, the coating we're going to use. And then my crew leaders mark in how much we purchased and how much we actually used. I like to keep track of that as well. And then this will flex for as many jobs as you need. And then we have a bottom section here for change orders. Change orders, I usually have the homeowners agree to a price before that, but also I keep track of which apprentice, how many hours, and how much materials were used for each change order too, in case I can, in case we quantify it time and materials as well. And there's another section for crew leader notes down there, sort of open door policy. So that's what basically so that's our master jump sheet. I'll show you one we're working on. We just finished up, and this is actually a multifaceted home here. So we did a dog kennel, and now we're moving on to the home. Oh, let's go back up to the kennel project here. So in this folder, I label it by the client's name. We go into which particular project we're doing. You can see the jump sheet here for that project. And this is what one looks like when it's all filled out. So obviously, client's information here. My apprentices, every day, they label who was working on that job, which day, and how many hours. We have our total amount of hours. We have budget. And then we start going through which project here. Now, this was a really interesting one, and this is where the jump sheet shines because we have, in an area like, a hallway in this kennel. We have the walls in Benjamin Moore Scuff X. We have ductwork being sprayed, Benjamin Moore Scuff X. We have floors being done in Sherwin-Williams Macropoxy 646. So this keeps track of everything. Now, we also do this in a little different way too, where we have a whole bunch of identical rooms. We have 6 identical pet rooms here. So basically they're all going to be the same. So we just list the rooms here instead of having 6 particular chunks like this. And then when I go through, any special concerns, I label in yellow so that when my guys come through, they'll say, okay, notes, they know it's from me because it's bright yellow, and it'll say caulk with Lexel along the floor to fill gaps. So in this particular one, it's a concrete block where the floor is epoxied, the walls are concrete block, there's a crack that keeps opening up, so we're using Lexel roofing adhesive or roofing sealant to bridge that gap. It's clear, it's paintable, it's some of the coolest stuff on the face of the planet. You can epoxy right over it. It'll move. The epoxy will obviously break, but the crack won't. The crack won't move. So we have metal doors using some Sherwin-Williams DTM Alkyd, and then change orders down here. So yeah, this one's done. So I can look back at the end of every day. My crew leaders look at this, and I can look at what's been done. I can look at the amount of hours. We can look at coatings, all that good stuff. And then also, there is a process there's a daily process that my crew leaders follow. Danny, and I'll get to your question in just a second here. I take some pictures of particular things that I want them to pay attention to. Here we have this is an invoice from Benjamin Moore I threw in as well. I don't know if Luminol is a little slow to pull up here. I'll get rid of the kennel sheet. So we have pictures here, and then we have folders for after pictures and before pictures. So so that's a Sherwin-Williams invoice. When we use some odd products, we always throw that in there as well. Let's see what they got for, tons of before pictures here. You can see that washing, cleaning, sanding, all sorts of good. We have tests here as well, flooring scratch test done, pictures of prep work. All right, after pictures. Okay. So yeah, that's basically, we fill out the jump sheet. I make a folder for that particular client. The next step before we actually get to the job is our weekly war room meeting. So every Monday morning, 6 a.m., you can see here, we all meet at our war room. And we basically do this. We have a very set meeting schedule. I keep it to an hour, and we basically go through a little bit of personal stuff. We go through some development, and then we basically go through the last week's job. So we'll go to the week previous, and we'll say, okay, Red Crew, you were on the Mo project. So we'll pull up that jump sheet, and we'll go over and say, okay, you were under budget. Why did you go under budget? Did we forget something, or did you just overperform? Not overperform. Did you perform better than other jobs like that? And we'll go through and we'll discuss. And this is the entire company, from everybody's first day down to people who've worked for me for 4 or 5 years. Everybody is in here because this is my time to build culture with them. So let's go through. I tell you what, before I go through. Okay, so we're at the war room meeting. We go through the project, just like I showed you guys with that kennel project. I'll pull that up. I'll walk the crew and the entire company through that project. And then at 7, when that meeting's over, they actually go to that job and then do it. Before I finish up this process with you, maybe I'll answer a few questions here. See what we got. Thank you everybody for watching. I do appreciate it. This is a lot of fun here. So Russ Perry, hi to you. Mike Danahy, thank you to you too. Good to see you. Daniel Himnowitz, thank you, sir. Thank you for watching. Daniel Himowitz, are the notes permanently attached to the customer's name? Yes. If you're talking about those jump sheets, the actual jump sheets, yes. This doesn't go away. None of this stuff goes away. This is all there unless somebody changes it. Thank you everybody for watching. Chad Flood, Nick Patton, Josh Wynn, Andy Chadwick. Oh, Eric Horn. You're my midday show while I pack my household. Good for my retirement move. Eric, if I recall right, is an old Army friend of mine, and he must be retiring from the Army, and he's probably, 38 years old now. That awesome retirement there. So, Danny, how do your employees enter their info into the jump sheet? Phone, tablet, app? Phone. They all have smartphones. and I pay them a monthly cell phone allowance to use those phones. So they're always tapping away there. I'm gonna tabletize my business so I can be a little more mobile instead of dragging around the laptop. And then as soon as I find a good, reasonably priced tablet, I will probably get some more of those for my crew. Sam Chung, Oscar Gonzalez, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Okay, so we'll go to the last little bit here. The project is in process. My guys, they can text me, they can call me. I have a continuum of how we solve problems. It starts with the guy who's on his first day of work, and the end is me. And when we draw this diagram in my shop, I have a brick wall between me and the rest of the company. On the other side, the person guarding that brick wall is my right-hand man, my integrator. Everything must go through him before it gets to me. If he doesn't know how to solve a problem or he hasn't come across it, he throws that problem over the wall like a grenade for me, and I land on it and I take one for the team and solve it. But it's a good way for these people to sort of communicate with each other. They all have smartphones, so they can all pull up the same jump sheet, and they can be looking at the same thing and say, well, okay, we're doing gentle gray Scuffex. Is it different than, if the ducks are different from that, and a different shine, they'll figure that out. Or, macroepoxy. I've not used macroepoxy before. How do we do this here? So, John Harrell, how difficult are the sheets to make in the drive? I do similar stuff on Excel. Oh, it's the same thing. I mean, this is the most basic of Excel spreadsheets. It's just Google's version, G Sheets there. So, I mean, this couldn't be any easier. There's the biggest difference you'll notice is just a few of the command things up here are a little less efficient than in Excel. There's a few things in Excel that are just one click instead of 2 or 3 clicks, which is nice. But otherwise, this is just an Excel spreadsheet. And as a matter of fact, you can take an Excel spreadsheet, do this, and then just save it to your Google Drive, and Google Drive will automatically convert it. Now, unless you got a whole bunch of odd fonts and things like that, it'll convert fine. Once in a while, there is a function that doesn't exactly go, but that's basically, you can just do this in Excel. And I know you can go in the field even and just do an Excel spreadsheet, and if you don't have any cell service, you can just upload it later to your Google Drive. Okay, so when the project is in process, the guys can always call me. They can collaborate on these things. When the project is complete, basically every Friday night, I try to figure out what we did as a company. So what I will do is I will go to the jump sheets, or I'll go to my calendar and say, okay, we're finishing up Jaeger, we're finishing up Mo, we're finishing up Raymond today. So I'll just pull up that sheet and say, okay, this is how many hours we have into it. This is how much material we used. Here's the things that are done. And I write out an invoice for my client, and then email that off to them based on that. Let's see what else we got here. So, and again, ScanBot. I ScanBot all my estimates and invoices in there and have a folder for each client. I keep the estimates and the invoices separate from this only because it doesn't add anything to my apprentice's experience for this sort of thing. So I invoice it, and then as part of my goal setting for the year, I'll get you back out to, here's the 2 sections of my drive again, my personal side and there. My personal side, but it also deals with business stuff. I have my, let's see if I can find the goal tracker here. So, goal tracker. So this is basically, come on now, these things take a little while to work here. So this is basically what I want to do for the business this year. What I'm going, let's see if we can, yeah, so basically this is my entire year right here, 52 weeks, what I would like to do. And then I have another sheet broken out by, at the end of every week, my crews are color coded here. So I'll list what they did, what the value of that was, and then I will have it populate into 3 metrics. Now the 3 metrics are hours worked, total revenue that week, and then how much revenue per hour I made that week. So I will go through and I will do this every week. And as part of, I also do my my TimeStation app too, and I'll get a weekly payroll report. I'll put that there. I'll add up the hours, and that helps with that metric. But then every week I sit down and I use those jump sheets to figure out what we actually did that week, and then I'll make one of these for it. So this helps me track my goals, and then at every one of my production meetings, my war room meetings, every Monday morning, I'll actually go through and we will say how we did on our 3 metrics this last week. Did we work enough hours? Did we make enough revenue? And how was our revenue per hour? That's sort of the our fail-safe into how's it all work. So that is my goal tracker. That goes into there, and those jump sheets really help me figure out those numbers every year there. So Danny, my 13-year-old, knows more about Google than me. This is the easiest thing on the face of the planet. I tweak these every week, so what you're seeing is about the 24th revision to most of these things. They start off as the most basic of spreadsheets. Every week, I'm one of my core values is constant improvement for my company. And every week, the jump sheet looks different. Every week, my goal tracker looks different. All these things, my info sheets, I add to them, I take away from them, I modify them, so that I've had weekly about 24 chances now to change every one of these. So this isn't a first viable solution, minimal viable solution here. These are things that evolved over time. Okay, so when the invoice is done, then I put it in the folder. There's a couple other kind of things that I want to show you how I use to help out my business here. I have all my employee information on the safe side here. Part of this in a help is my org chart. We have a lot of times I like to kind of model things, so we'll have a current org chart and then where I'd like to be during the summer or where I'd like to be during the winter versus summer, things like that. We have our people analyzer. Every quarter I go through and we'll go through based on our core values, and we will rate the people in our company. And this is something where they can set their goals for the quarter, they can set their goals for the year, and every quarter I sit down with each person in my company and we go through that and track those. And as a matter of fact, here's the latest. That was actually an old version. This is the new version, the self-assessment form. Let's see down below here. These things take a little while to work sometimes. Let's go down farther. So yeah, here's actually all my core values for the business listed down here, questions to help them answer it, and then they self-assess. And then we help that with, we have a retention plan. Oh, let's see what else is. Oh yeah, we have an employee packet. So I will basically, every new hire, I will send out a whole bunch of documents to. We have an employment application. We have the job description. We have my apprenticeship program. So basically this lays out what the next 4 years of their life are going to look like, pay-wise, what I expect out of them, all that good stuff. And then since these are all saved on your drive, I can be on my smartphone in the wilderness in northern Minnesota, and somebody can have say, hey, I'm interested in a job, and I'll take my 5 documents, I'll email it out to them, just say, what is this? What do you think? This is what it looks like here. One of the things that I find kind of most, and you don't necessarily need a drive to do this, but this is really helpful, is the Eisenhower matrix. Eisenhower is the Eisenhower, the president, the general, everything else. He came up with a matrix. It's usually a 4-box matrix where there's things that are important and urgent, important, not urgent, and then unimportant and urgent, and unimportant and not urgent. Now, and you populate those boxes with things in your company that you need to do, and you use those different boxes to figure out the order in which you're going to do them. Now, I just took out the unimportant things, and instead I put a long-term box there. So in the red box here, these are things, all of these to me are important, but they have a different time horizon. So there's urgent things that I need to be working on now. The second I have free time, that gets worked on. Not urgent are the things that are, maybe I'll hand off to some of my people. Long term are things that I'm going to look at every day and see if I can knock them out. If I can't, I'm going to keep moving towards it. And then one of the cool things is we have me. I put a lot on my plate. I like to lead by example. And everything is color coded. You can see there's universality through all this. Everything that is mine, is a proprietor's, is purple. And then I have my red crew, blue crew, yellow crew, green crew, and orange crew. And the crew leader of each one of those gets their own list here. So we'll give him we just call it our Eisenhower tasks. And we'll give them tasks, and every month or every weekly meeting, they have to report on these tasks and what they've done. And this helps us actually move forward instead of just having these meetings that go nowhere. We have safety. We have all our safety training, safety documents here that we go through, RRP, sort of things like that. Let's see. Oh, yes, one of our things that is super evolving at this point is our processes. So everything we do, just like my information sheets for my clients. Excuse me, take a little drink here. So just like I have information sheets for my clients, I also have information sheets for my apprentices. And these are printed off and they're laminated and put into a command book for each crew leader so that each crew leader has a binder. So, okay, let's see, we go to, let's find a good one. New construction. This is a process that will tell you how to do an entire newly constructed home from start to finish in an ideal world. And again, we don't normally get an ideal world, but this basically lays out, okay, so you find yourself at a new construction site. We take before pictures. We give our calling card to the client, so we set up an initial contact. We set up a shop. We go through a verbal drill and a checklist and a walkthrough with our apprentices. So this is something that's sort of unique to my apprenticeship. We verbally drill and we do checklist walkthroughs on every project. So when we take the before pictures, the calling card to the client, this is for the crew leader. Setting up the shop is for the apprentices. The apprentices will unload the truck. They'll set up a shop. By that time, the crew leader will go through and say, okay, here's our job site walkthrough. We're going to be doing the entire inside of this new home. Now, we're going to go through a verbal drill. And we start with the youngest person on the crew and we say, what would you do first? Or what would you do today? What would your process be? What are we going to tackle first? And they would basically walk through the job. Okay, well, we should probably vacuum. We should probably, plastic off the windows. And they're going to make some mistakes in there. So then you go to the next senior person and you have them say, okay, based on what the youngest person said, how would you change that? And they'll say, well, we really should vacuum first, then plastic, instead of plastic versus vacuum. And then we go to the next senior, then the next senior person. And finally, the crew leader will then say, okay, all that is good. Here's one thing we're missing. We really, really, really should mop off the walls with dust before we vacuum, or we really should vacuum off the walls first before we do that. That's the good process. Does everybody understand what's going on? And this happens every morning. So not only do they have this sheet in a laminated form laid out on the job site to tell them what to do, every morning they're getting verbally drilled on this. So it's repetition. It's verbal, it's visual, everything else. And repetition, we have a very repetition-based business. That's basically how you get these people up to speed to be revenue generators quickly. One of the things we're doing for some of our other projects, I'm creating these decision trees for a lot of the stuff. So this one's happened to be for a decks, fence, playset, and pergola. This is our wood restoration process. So we come down and we say, okay, so you find yourself on a deck, a fence, a playset, or a pergola. Do we need to strip the existing finish? And there's just a yes and no answer. And if it's yes, here's how to strip it. If it's no, does the wood need to be brightened? Yes or no? And you just keep following that down. So there's three scenarios. We have to strip something off, we have to strip and brighten, or we have to strip, brighten, and wash. Or we can just wash. So basically, these are all going to be laminated, given to the crews so that it can just be verbally drilled into it. Everybody knows how to do it, but it's really nice to have all this in there, especially for people who haven't been doing it for 20 years like me. So that's another thing we're doing. And one of the coolest things that I've sort of been using this for, we have quarterly leadership retreats for me and the guys, and I started a leadership library. So these are books that I've listened to, books that I've read that I think would benefit the business. So I will put them into the drive so everybody has access to them. So this happens to be Traction, the audiobook. And what I do is they're free to listen to those whenever they want. If they're super hungry, they can just burn through them. Otherwise, at our leadership retreats, I'll say, okay, everybody, this is what we're going to focus on. There's something I want you to pay attention to. We're going to go to the book Rocket Fuel, and we're going to go chapter 3. So the day before our leadership retreat, everybody go chapter 3 in Rocket Fuel, and then we're going to discuss it. Everybody bring one thing they want to discuss about that. So this is one way for me to keep furthering my leaders, and this is a really good way to do it because it's stuff that I vetted, stuff that I know will help my company, and everybody listens to their iPad or iPod or their phone anyway, so why not just have it all here for them, and we can use it as a company. And so that is about it. I'm going to flip this around here, see if we got any more comments. Wow, employment, or John Harrell, wow, employment application forms, packets, and apprenticeship forms look great. I'm working on hiring new people and need to work on those. Yeah, and these are just some things where it takes a ton of time. Basically, if I could give people any sort of perspective, basically, it took me about 50 hours from what is Google Drive to creating the framework for this. Now, obviously, this has been populated over the last couple months with things, and we've changed it every week, bits and pieces here. But basically, it took me about 50 hours to come up, what is Google Drive? What do we need? What do we have to put in there? How can this best benefit our business? What's the simplest way we can do this? And yeah, I just went through and did that and made an entire framework for the business here. So, oh, Josh Wynn. Nick came here to hear your thoughts on mill thickness. All right, so let me flip this guy around. I'm going to grab my tea. And if you guys have any other questions, comments, whatever here, just let me know. Josh, Archie, my good friend from Sherwin, thank you for watching, my friend. If you guys haven't stole some of Archie's time at one of these industry events, do it. He's a coatings guy, he's a business guy, he's a marketer, he knows his stuff. Grab Archie by the arm and talk to him, you will not be disappointed. So Josh sent me an Instagram message asking about mill thickness, and specifically between, there's this sort of... There's this moral impasse we have to walk through between spraying things hanging and spraying things flat. Now, most of the time it doesn't matter. A skilled person can get a very good finish on both, but everybody here knows that if you lay a cabinet door or a service door flat and spray it, you can get a more even mill thickness, and sometimes you can't even get enough mill thickness with some of these true enamels when you hang a cabinet door straight up and down. Now, the reason we hang cabinet doors when we spray them is you can get all the sides at once, and it basically saves you the time of letting this dry, flipping it over, and doing it again. One of the guiding lights that I use to make decisions like this is as a question I ask myself, probably 40 times a day. Is it better for me? Is it better for the client? Or is it both? In a perfect world, it would be a better solution for me, and it would be better for the client. A better solution for me is something that's easy and fast. A better solution for the client normally is something that takes you a lot of time and is harder to work with. You're going to give them a better finish. So what I try to do is I will forsake my own needs for the clients, but with the promise that I will always do what's good for the client, but I will then work to make it as efficient and process driven as possible. And if I can't make money off of it, or I can't be profitable doing it, then I'll find a way to step that back a little bit. But honestly, I've always just said, what's the best? Let's figure out a way to do it, because even if it takes us longer, even if it takes 40 to 50 hours of prep on a kitchen, somebody out there is going to have us do it because they've had bad contractors in their house and they want this. And this is the way. I have a self-limiting factor that I'm sure some other people have. It's my sleep at night factor. I could use an eggshell wall paint on cabinets. If I really wanted to, I could probably get an okay finish, but I couldn't sleep at night. So I have to use oil primers, I have to use hybrid enamels, oil enamels, things like that, because that's what makes me sleep at night. So I have that weird sort of limiting factor. The benefit of that is that it's good for the clients. So it's good for business and it's good for the clients. So I'm fine with it. I just have to know it and recognize it and, know thyself, as they say. John, oh yes, with the mill thickness stuff too. Josh, I would put a set of cabinet doors up against any in the world that were done flat versus upright like this. I know people get good finishes like this. This is not me saying you're doing it wrong if you're doing this, but when you do it like this and give it time to cure and then flip it, you get such a beautiful finish. It is just an amazing thing. So when we make the decision whether to finish cabinet doors like this or like this, we have to ask ourselves, if we do them like this, is this for the client or is this for us? If it's for us, we have to know that going into it, because don't think you're doing the client a favor by doing this. And when I think about my processes, I think about, what if this was somebody building my home or finishing my home? Would you want a contractor or a painter that's focused on getting it the quickest way, that always sides with himself versus you? Or would you want somebody who will say, listen, this might cost some more money, but your needs will always be put first as a client. I will always look out for you. I will give you the finest thing. I will figure out how to do it profitably. If I can't do it profitably, shake your hand and walk off. You need somebody else to do this. It's just not a good fit. So Josh, let me know if I need to expound on that anymore. But correct wet mill thickness and dry mill thickness is very, very important, especially with enamels. Now, one thing I see online a lot is people are getting a little buck wild with bin primer, bin shellac, lacquers, water-based stuff, polyurethane clears on top. People are messing with a lot of chemistry that they don't really understand. When you're redoing a set of kitchen cabinets, most likely it's crappy lacquer that's on there. So you're dealing with a solvent-based lacquer that's very volatile, very brittle, doesn't hold up to water. You're then using an alcohol-based shellac product to go over that, which is actually more like a shellac than a paint. It has the same molecular structure. And remember, there are no exterior approved uses for lacquers or shellacs. I know people use shellacs on knots outside, but oil primer will always do that, and it's also rated for exterior, seal the bleeds. So you're dealing with a volatile lacquer that's old and failing, you're dealing with an alcohol-based stuff, and then sometimes people are using a hybrid enamel, which is water and oil, and then sometimes people are putting a polyurethane on top of that. Take a very long time to think about these processes. You're messing with a lot of chemistry, a lot of things that cure at different rates, dry at different rates, are sandable at different times, that take different wet mill thicknesses, things like that. They're affected differently by humidity, by us. We're always the variable too, so just be very careful. Again, remember when at the top of the show, I've said simpler is better. I have a base process for everything I paint. You prep it, you prime it, you do top coats. Yes, we modify that for certain things, but try to stick to that. In 20 years, I've not had a callback on a set of kitchen cabinets. I've used oil primer, and I've used either oil, waterborne, or hybrid enamels on top. Not a big fan of lacquer, not because I think it's the devil, but because it's just a different market. Conversion varnishes are different. Tons of skill, very high quality, just they're not approved for use in the field, so it's a little tough when you get into warranty issues. But there has been a bomb-proof system over the years, and I even apply this to exteriors too. You swap out enamel for elastomeric acrylics, and you prep, you prime with oil primer, and you put 2 coats on. And people want to get tricky. They want to do weird stuff with it. They want to deviate from that. Simpler is better. I've never had a callback on this stuff, and I would consider my interior finishes to be better than the homeowners need, for sure. So Josh, let me know if that works for you. Let's see if we got anything else. Russ Perry, I have some PVC shutters to spray, and you're giving advice it would be better to lay them down to paint them. Absolutely, especially shutters are a great thing because we almost never paint the back, especially if they're PVC shutters. That's the textbook case of you get an extension ladder, you get your 2x4s out on some sawhorses, you get your scaffold planks out, you lay those shutters out. I mean, I like to kind of wash off the back, get all the bat stuff, the wasp stuff, the bee stuff out of there, clean them all up. And most of the time, honestly, I've done a whole bunch of experiments with primers and top coats. And honestly, if you use top of the line Sherwin or Benjamin Moore, for that matter, any manufacturer, but Sherwin and Benjamin Moore are mainly what I use for exterior stuff. If you use an Emerald, a Duration, or an Aura on those shutters, that stuff will stick better than, well, I won't say better. That stuff will stick as well as any primer product that you can put on there. I've not had a peeling issue or a failing issue when going with like a straight Aura or a straight Duration right on top of kind of old, even really, really bombed out sun-bleached shutters. And it's not because I don't do that process I do that process not because I want to save my time and sort of cheat my clients. It's because I only charge them for that, and I can save them a lot of money, and it's actually more economical to do that, and it's a little more fair. So. Armando, thank you for watching. Hector Valencia, Eric Horn, Josh Wynn, completely agree. Well said. I agree too. Again, you're not wrong if you do them up, but with my core values in my company and what I'd like to achieve, I just do it a different way. And it's just sort of, it kind of is what it is. So Russ Perry, no bonding primer. Now, check with it. You're from the land of Canada up north. You may have access to different shutters than I do, but always do your scratch test. So in most of my exterior vehicles, we'll have a can of oil primer. We'll have maybe 2 or 3 cans of water-based primer, one red, one gray, one white, maybe even a tan thrown in there, so that when we run into problems like this, like we'll say, oh my God, we showed up at this house and these shutters aren't the normal kind of rough textured, able to accept paint. These are actually kind of shiny and they're kind of like, they almost feel silicone-y on there. And so I want my guys to have primer there so that they can do a quick test and scratch it. And if the primer comes off, then we know we either have an unpaintable shutter or we have to do some crazy prep process. But honestly, I found that the chemical bond of a lot of bonding primers will work well on a lot of the new PVC, plastic sort of things. Oil primer, it does sort of work, but most of the shutters we have here are wood grain, and they come with a factory finish. They get blasted by the sun. They take paint perfectly. You can't scratch it off if you try. Rust, they're really smooth. I'd be curious to know if they're new or they're old. If they're old, they're going to have a better chance of accepting paint. If they're new, you got to be real careful. What I would do is I have PVC trim interior on my bathroom in my walk-in shower upstairs, and that stuff gets hit with a ton of water. There's 6 people that shower there every day, and they get blasted with water. Okay, very old. And I was skeptical. I called up the company, I think it was AZEC, and I said, what should I, this is plastic. In theory, this is something I would never paint, but I need to paint it. And they said, don't use oil. It's not going to bond as well. Use a good water-based bonding primer. And I did, and it's perfect. It's been, probably 6-7 years, 6 showers a day, and it looks as good as the day I put it on. So obviously you're probably going to have a little less luck with it outside with the sun and the rain and all that stuff, but honestly I don't know a better test than that. So I would test a water-based bonding primer, tint it if you can, and then do a scratch test. And I would give it 24 hours, and then I would go after it with your fingernail. If you can take some off with your fingernail, you're probably gonna have to find a different process there. So all right, people, I think I've done enough for today here. If you guys have any other questions, we can keep this discussion going. If you want to know more about Google, if you want to know more about how we run the business, Russ, no problem. I appreciate the questions. If you guys need anything else, you know where to find me. Share this. It's the kindest thing you can do for this show. This is for pros. It's for homeowners. It's for us to share these thoughts, improve the standards of our industry so that all of our businesses get better, our standards of living get better, and we can attract people to the trades, which is our ultimate goal here. So thank you again to the PDCA for giving the questions, for sharing this along your channels, and archiving this on their website. And also, if you guys want to see any of these, obviously you can search Ask a Painter, or you can go on YouTube. All the shows are archived there. And you guys know I'm an open book. You can get a hold of me anytime, anywhere, and ask me questions, and I'm happy to help you out. So thank you guys so much. Again, share this show, and we will see you guys next week.